I discussed myself. How did I become this person? I deserve to suffer for what is about to happen. I have ruined everything. I let a single moment spiral into something grotesque. Something I can never undo. I should have walked away. I should have shut it down before it became this twisted mess. But I didn't. I let it continue, nurturing something sick and selfish. And now? Now, the truth is surfacing, ready to destroy everything in its path. The night felt unusually still. The kind of quiet that pressed against the walls and settled deep into my chest. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, tracing the faint patterns of moonlight that flickered through the blinds. My thoughts were restless, drifting between reality and the hazy space of exhaustion. Something didn't feel right. Maybe it was just the loneliness creeping in, the weight of an unspoken worry I couldn't quite name. But then, a sound. Soft, almost imperceptible, but enough to send a chill through me. A faint creak, like the hesitant shift of a door being nudged open. My breath hitched as I turned my head toward the doorway. Heart pounding. A shadow lingered just beyond the threshold. Motionless. The air in the room thickened, my skin prickling with unease. I squinted, trying to make out the figure. My mind racing through 1,000 possibilities. Was it my imagination? A dream bleeding into reality? But no, it was real. Someone was there. My pulse quickened as I sat up slightly. The sheets tangled around me. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand an answer, but the figure shifted before I could find the words. And in that moment, I knew everything was about to change. The moment stretched unbearably, thick with a tension I couldn't explain. The figure in the doorway hesitated, as if unsure whether to step forward or retreat. My pulse pounded in my ears, my breath coming too fast, too shallow. I forced myself to sit up, my voice catching in my throat as I finally whispered, "Who's there?" But deep down, I already knew, the way the shadow shifted. The way the dim hallway light caught the outline of familiar features, I recognized them. Maxwell. Relief flickered through me, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by something else. Why was he here? It was late, far too late for casual visits or restless wandering. He shouldn't have been awake. Something was wrong. Maxwell? I said again, firmer this time. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped forward, his bare feet making no sound against the floor. His posture was tense, his hands clenched at his sides. That was when I noticed it, the way his breathing was uneven. The way his eyes flickered with something unspoken. I couldn't sleep, he finally muttered, but his voice was strained, as if the words carried more weight than they should. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That sent a chill down my spine. Something about this moment felt off. I swallowed hard, shifting to the edge of the bed, studying him more closely. "What's wrong?" I asked softly, but my stomach was already twisting, bracing for an answer I might not want to hear. Maxwell hesitated, his fingers twitching slightly, an old habit of his, one I recognized from years of knowing him. It was the way he moved when he was trying to say something but couldn't quite find the words. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, but every syllable carried a strange weight. "I need to tell you something," he said, "something I should have told you a long time ago." The air in the room seemed to shift, growing heavier. My heart skipped a beat, my mind racing through 100 different possibilities. A confession? A secret? Something I had been blind to all along? I forced myself to hold his gaze, even as a strange sense of dread crept over me. "What is it?" For the first time since stepping into the room, Maxwell finally met my eyes. And in that moment, I knew, whatever he was about to say, whatever truth had been locked away until now, it would change everything. The room felt colder now, the weight of Maxwell's words hanging between us like a storm cloud waiting to break. My pulse was steady, but only because I forced it to be. My fingers tightened against the sheets as I tried to keep my voice calm. "Tell me, Maxwell." But even as I spoke, a part of me hesitated. Did I really want to hear this? His throat bobbed as he swallowed, his posture tense, rigid. The air between us felt charged, a silent war raging within him, between the words he wanted to say and the ones he was afraid of. And yet, I could see it in his eyes, the battle was already lost. Whatever truth he carried, whatever weight had been pressing down on him, he could no longer keep it buried. He started, then stopped. exhaling sharply as his hands curled into fists at his sides. He shook his head, as if frustrated with himself. This is harder than I thought. I leaned forward slightly, my body instinctively reacting to the tension in his. Maxwell, whatever it is, you can tell me, I said, my voice steady, but inside, I was unraveling. Why was I so afraid of what he was about to say? He let out a dry, humorless chuckle. That's the thing, he murmured, finally lifting his gaze to meet mine. I don't think I can tell you. Because once I do, you'll never look at me the same way again. A cold chill ran down my spine. My stomach twisted into a knot. This isn't normal. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted him to continue. Because I already knew, deep down, in some dark, unspoken part of me, that whatever he was about to reveal, I wouldn't be able to forget it. Silence stretched between us, long and suffocating. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The world outside felt distant, irrelevant, as though time had stopped in this moment, waiting for his next words to set everything into motion. And then, finally, he spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it shattered the quiet like a gunshot. It's you. My breath caught. My body tensed. My mind went blank. The world seemed to tilt beneath me as the weight of those two words crashed over me. I felt my pulse quicken, my hands trembling slightly as I searched his face for some kind of explanation. Some kind of way to rationalize what he had just said. Maxwell, I whispered, my voice barely my own. No, this wasn't happening. This wasn't real. But he was already looking at me differently now. The war was over, and I had just lost. 2. His words sat heavy in the air between us, thick and unmoving, as if time itself had stopped in the wake of his confession. It's you. I heard them over and over again, each time striking me harder, sinking deeper, twisting into something unshakable. My breath was shallow, my fingers gripping the fabric of the sheets beneath me as if that could anchor me back to reality. But reality had already shifted, fractured into something I wasn't ready to confront. Maxwell's eyes never left me, searching, pleading, waiting for something, an answer, a reaction, an absolution that I wasn't sure I could give. My mouth opened, but no words came. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to say it. There was no script for a moment like this. No right thing to do. No way to erase what had already been said. I wanted to reject it. To tell him he was wrong. That he didn't mean it. That this was some fleeting, confused thought he would laugh about later. But the way he looked at me, the way his voice had trembled when he spoke, told me that this wasn't a passing moment. This was something that had been building for a long time. Something he had carried with him in silence. And now that it was spoken, it could never be unspoken. A sharp pang of guilt sliced through me. Hot and unforgiving. How had I not seen this coming? Had there been signs? Had I ignored them? Or worse, had I allowed this without even realizing it? The thought made my stomach twist. A nausea creeping up my throat. Maxwell shifted his weight, exhaling a shaky breath. Say something, he whispered, his voice raw with vulnerability. I swallowed hard, willing my mind to push past the shock, to find solid ground in this storm. Maxwell, you don't mean that, I said carefully, my voice betraying the unease I felt. You're confused, you're going through something, and you're just looking for. Don't. He cut me off, shaking his head. Don't tell me this isn't real. I've tried to fight it. I've tried to push it away. But I can't. I don't want to. Shame burned through me, hotter than fire, wrapping around my ribs like a vice. I couldn't let this continue. I couldn't let him believe that this was something that could ever be. And yet, the words I needed to say, asterisk the ones that would break this apart. Put distance between us. Make this all go away, asterisk they wouldn't come. Because the truth I was too afraid to face was that a part of me had already seen this. And maybe, just maybe, a part of me had let it happen. That realization hit harder than anything else. Because now, the guilt wasn't just about Maxwell. It was about me, too. The tension in the room had escalated to a point where every second felt like a ticking time bomb. Each beat of my heart echoing the inevitability of what was to come. Maxwell's presence, once a familiar comfort, now seemed to charge the atmosphere with an electric, dangerous energy, as if the air itself were waiting for a spark to ignite a conflagration. We sat facing each other. our eyes locked in a silent battle of unspoken truths and repressed fears. The room, once a haven of quiet understanding, had transformed into a crucible of mounting pressure where every breath we took brought us closer to an irreversible breaking point. I could almost feel the invisible hands of fate tightening their grip around us, reminding me that some moments cannot be undone, that secrets and desires left unchecked are bound to erupt with the force of 1,000 storms. Maxwell shifted in his seat, his restless movements betraying the inner turmoil that had been simmering beneath his calm exterior. And in that charged silence, the weight of every unsaid word and every deferred confession pressed down on me with an almost unbearable intensity. I could sense that something monumental was about to occur, something that would shatter the delicate balance we had managed to maintain for so long. The ticking of the clock on the wall became a metronome to my anxious thoughts, each click underscoring the fleeting nature of the present moment, a moment in which we teetered on the edge of making decisions that could forever alter the course of our lives. Every detail in the room, the dim light, the shadows that danced on the walls, the low hum of distant traffic, contributed to a sense of impending chaos. I tried to steady my racing mind, to ground myself in the present, yet the pull of the unknown, of forbidden truths, was too powerful to ignore. I reached out, as if to grasp at some semblance of control, and in that gesture, our intertwined hands spoke volumes about the desperation and longing that had been building over time. It was a silent acknowledgement that we were both caught in a spiral of events that we could neither predict nor reverse. In that fragile, volatile instant, the tension was palpable, a dangerous mix of anticipation, regret, and unspoken passion that threatened to engulf us completely. I knew that any misstep, any word uttered in haste, could set off a chain reaction that would leave us both forever changed, leaving behind nothing but the remnants of what once was, and the painful certainty that we had reached the point of no return. If it scares people, I swallowed hard my own words, striking something deep inside me. Love isn't wrong, I said carefully, but sometimes acting on it is, especially when it could hurt the people we care about. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected that answer but needed to hear it anyway. I get that, he said. I do, but what am I supposed to do with these feelings? Bury them? Pretend they don't exist? No, I finally said, shaking my head. You don't have to pretend. I need to confess something too, and I'm just going to tell this to help you to channel your feelings into something that helps you grow, not something that holds you back. He sank into the chair across from me, his shoulders slumping. That's easier said than done, Mom, but tell me, what do you have to confess? Well, Maxwell, I said softly, I think you might have already noticed it a little for the last couple of nights while we were sleeping together. For a moment he didn't respond, then to my surprise he let out a quiet laugh. Your touches, he asked. Of course I noticed, but I told myself you did that to make me feel good. To be honest, they only make me feel lost. They make me feel so close to what I want but yet so far away. You're not lost, I said, leaning forward. You're just finding your way, and that's okay. It's part of growing up. He looked at me, then his eyes filled with a vulnerability that made my chest ache. I don't want to lose you, Mom, he said. I can't lose you. You won't, I said, my voice firm. No matter what, I'm here. That will never change. At that moment, without him noticing, my heart was pounding high up in my chest. I still hadn't told him how I felt, and that those touches were not only for his benefit, they were also because of what I wanted deep inside. So I decided to not let him come in between anymore. I had to clear my thoughts and tell him how I felt. But let me finish what I was going to say. Maxwell, those touches, they were not to make you feel good. They what he said. I did that because I felt something too, I confessed. In fact, I still feel something, Maxwell. I was scared to tell you because I am your mom, and it is wrong. It cannot be true what we feel for each other, but I can't deny what I am feeling. He stayed silent for a moment, and then he leaned towards me, grabbing my leg. Maxwell, I said, we can't do this. What about Dad? We can. No one has to know, he whispered, but yet I saw hesitation in his eyes. I leaned towards him, kissing him intensely, but not for long. I knew we couldn't do this, and I knew he wasn't sure either, so I pushed him away. Let's just get a good night's rest and then we'll talk tomorrow. Okay, I said. He nodded. No, Ed, but we both felt the tension wasn't gone. We both went to the bathroom to brush our teeth and make ourselves ready for bed. While changing into my pajamas, I smiled at him while he was washing his face. I went to the bedroom and crawled into my bed. For the last couple of weeks from that first night of his confession on, we had been sleeping together, so it was pretty normal for him to join me. A couple of moments later he entered the room, and before he got to the the bed. I opened the sheets for him to step into. As I mentioned earlier, the tension still wasn't gone, and so I said, let's just make sure we take some good rest and then we discuss all this tomorrow before Dad returns. Okay, all right, he said. It felt like he had already resigned himself to the fact that nothing was going to happen, but I certainly hadn't. Unfortunately enough, I turned off the nightlight and said, good night, honey, turning away from him. Good night, Mom. I heard my mind was spinning. A few minutes felt like hours, and my thoughts were all over the place. At one moment my foot touched his leg, partly on purpose but yet partly by accident. He didn't turn away, and before I knew it I pulled him closer to me. He grabbed my leg and I turned around. I still hesitated for a moment, but I let it all happen. I kissed him, and we even went further than kissing. I am not going to go into detail about what exactly happened, but I let myself go, and for a moment I felt alive. I could forget all that had worried me in the last couple of weeks. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wash over me, and for the first time in a long time I felt alive. This wasn't wrong, it wasn't confusing, it was love, pure and simple love, and it was the kind of love that had grown naturally between us, blossoming out of years of care, trust and understanding. That's what I told myself while we were busy, but as quick as it started, as quick as it ended. I guess it was a bit too exciting for him. I can imagine when Maxwell pulled back, he smiled at me. We're okay, right? I nodded and made my way to the bathroom. The next few weeks were better, easier. Even Maxwell seemed more at peace, though there were still moments when the tension between us resurfaced. His father had returned and he started spending more time outside, hanging out with friends and even picking up some of the hobbies he'd abandoned in the last year. I threw myself into my routines, finding solace in the small everyday tasks that kept life moving forward. But as much as I wanted to believe we were healing, the undercurrent of what had passed between us remained. It was an invisible thread binding us together in a way neither of us could fully escape. Up until this point I still haven't told my husband about what happened, and Maxwell and I haven't talked about it either. I don't know what to do and I don't know what to think of it. What are your thoughts on it? I'm curious about other people's opinions on this, and that's why I am telling this story. It is crazy what happened, but I can't deny it, and on top of that I am never able to turn things back. Analyze main ideas and main characters.